Good. Okay.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm glad you guys are here with us today because I have a gentleman that has read the book and he is going to tell you about it because you need to go buy a copy of The Mark of the Beast and Your DNA. And I will give this over to this military man and he's going to tell you all about this book here that goes with it. It's yours.
That is me. I'm Charles Wright. Stand by to me, amazed and mesmerized. And I have discovered these books by a lady, Janice, that I think you might be interested in. And they are short, concise, non boring, and they're not the real thick kind to put on there also. And here's another book, The Mark of the Beast, there also, which is good reading. And so many books nowadays are just by word after word after word to make them real boring and see how much poundage they could get with the book. But I guarantee you, these are not that way. And I'm a real neophyte at a lot of this stuff. And I find it short, interesting reading. And she goes in behind a lot of the details that you've never heard before and you never hear anybody else say about. And I did 12 years active. I did 10 years reserve. I was a military guy. My call sign was Orville, and Orville was the first to fly and live the longest. I don't have to say anything more than that. And I was lucky enough to get to fly the F-4 Phantom. And out of our 60 that had air contract guarantees to go to flight training at Pensacola, there were just 5 of us that made it to the F-4. And out of that 60, several washed out, and I know at least one got killed right there in flight training. So it was a dangerous business. But it was a glorious form of insanity that I will never, ever get tired of reliving in my life. And getting to go straight up, straight down, nothing like it. But back to the subject here of these books by Lady Janice. Very interesting, short, concise, to the point. And I'm going to read to you the first little section of this, part 1. The night the king forgot his own dream. Babylon, 603 BC, and every morning since. Picture this: the most powerful man in the world wakes up in a cold sweat. His silk sheets are soaked. His palace guards stand outside the door, utterly useless. Nebuchadnezzar II, king of Babylon, conqueror of Jerusalem, the man who turned the walls of his city into one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, cannot shake the dread, and his settled on his chest like a stone. He dreamed something enormous, something that felt in the way that only the rarest dreams feel, absolutely terrifyingly real. And then, the details that make the story uniquely maddening, he forgot it. Not the feeling, not the dread, just the content. The images are gone like smoke, but the weight of them remains, pressing on his royal ribs like a prophecy that refuses to be ignored. So he does what kings do. He calls his wise men, his magicians, his enchanters, his sorcerers, his astrologers, the Chaden Brain Trust, the ancient world's equivalent of think tanks and intelligent agencies rolled into one, and he gives them a command so audacious it borders on insane. Tell me what I dream, and then tell me what it means. He will not give them the dream first. He cannot, because he does not remember it. And even if he did, these men would spend lifetimes crafting interpretation designed to please the king, not to tell him the truth. So the king draws a line. He says, if you tell me the dream itself, not just an interpretation, I fed you. Then I know you have across access to something real, to something beyond human knowledge, to the divine. But if you cannot tell me the dream, you are frauds. And frauds in Nebuchadnezzar's court had a very short career trajectory. They would have then cut into pieces and their houses made a dunghill. 4th century BC leadership was not known for the performance improvement plan. The thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known unto me the dream with interpretation, therefore ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. The astrologers panic. They give Nebuchadnezzar the ancient equivalent of nobody could have predicted this, telling him that no king on earth has ever asked such a thing, and that he requires is impossible without the gods themselves. And they are right. It is impossible for them, but not for a young Hebrew exile named Daniel, who is about to have the kind of night that only happens when heaven decides to move. Daniel and his 3 companions, Hananiah, Michael, and Azariah, who you might know by their Babylonian names as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, spend the night in prayer, not in panic, not in performance, not in prayer, and God answers. The mystery is revealed. And the next morning, Daniel walks into the presence of the most powerful man alive and says, in the essence, I know the dream. I know what it means, and I know who told me. What Daniel describes next has been studied by theologians, military historians, political philosophers, and at least one of the greatest scientific minds in the human history. But for 2.5 millennia, and still, most people have never heard the full version, the version that includes the feet, the clay, the mingling, and the reason it matters so desperately in 2026. Every empire throughout history believed it was the pinnacle. Every single one. Babylon, Rome, the British Empire, America. None of them saw the statue. None of them saw themselves in the feet. And there's the picture that's in the book. The clay feet. That's just a little tantalizer for you to think about. Requisition you some copies of these books. Very interesting, very informative, highly recommended. And like I said, I'm a pure neophyte to this, but I find it interesting and knowledgeable, and I think it'll do you some good to get those. Lady Janice is one of a kind on these things.